It's recording.
Yeah, thank you. Jai Baba, everybody. Welcome to Lord Meher book reading. As we come to the end of this year, this would be our last reading for this year until we meet next year. I welcome all of you all wherever you all are to enjoy this reading. And those are on Zoom, please, we would be reading one by one. And yeah, here we go. This today's reading is on seclusion. It was in Jaipur on Thursday, 9th January 1941, that Baba dictated his well-known message, "The Seven Realities of Meher Baba's Teaching." Meher Baba's teaching gives no importance to creed, dogma, caste systems, and the performance of religious ceremonies and rites, but to the understanding of the following seven realities. The only real existence is that of the one and only God, who is the self in every finite self. The only real love is the love for the infinity, for this infinity, God, which arouses an intense longing to see, know, and become one with its truth, God. The only real sacrifice is that in which, in pursuance of this love, all things, body, mind, position, welfare, and even life itself, are sacrificed. The only real renunciation is that which abandons, even in the midst of worldly duties, all selfish thoughts and desires. The only real knowledge is that knowledge that God is in the dweller, in good people, and so called. I kind of lost where I was reading from.
Number
The,
5, Mona.
okay. Okay, the only real knowledge is the knowledge that God is the inner dweller in good people and so called bad, in saint and so called sinner. The knowledge requires you to help all equally as circumstances demand, without expectation uh, of reward, and when compelled to take part in a dispute, to act without the slightest trace of the enmity or hatred, to try to make others happy with brotherly or sisterly feeling for each one, to harm no one in thought, word, or deed, not even those who harm you. The only real control is the discipline of the senses from indulgence in low desires, which alone ensures absolute purity of character. The only real surrender is that in which the voice is undisturbed by any adverse circumstances, and the individual amidst every kind of action is conform to the will of God. This
Mona,
message was especially significant. Okay.
you're cracking
Uh,
up a lot.
okay, honey bunny, you can read from here from this message. Thank
This message was especially significant because, for the first time perhaps, Baba ordered thousands of copies of it printed and then sent to his disciples and followers throughout India in order for them to distribute them wherever they lived. Ghani and Adi Sr. in Bangalore headed up the printing and distribution tasks, and thousands of copies of this message were handed out throughout India in the beginning months of 1941, and also sent to Europe and America. Baba's mandali were sent to various cities in India and instructed particularly to give it to persons in charge of temples, mosques, ashrams, and churches. Baba sent Gaimai, Manu, Meru, Meherwan, and Erich back to Bangalore on 14 January, along with Gulamasi, Sata, and Sarwar. Erich was ordered to help Ghani and Adi Sr. with the mass distribution of the seven realities message. Meru and Nagu were sent back to Nasik. Baba left Jaipur later the same day at 4 o'clock with Gustaji and Savak, who had joined him from Mehrabad, for a must tour of Gujarat, Kathiawar, and the Gimar Mountains. Kaka joined them at Ahmedabad, and Baba contacted musts there and at Rajkot, Morvi, Junagadh, Jamnagar, and Dwarka. Two musts were particularly interesting. In Rajkot, Baba contacted a saintly must whom he called Makiwala Baba. He was a strange but good must who had sat for years in one particular spot. Horrible as it may sound, his body was covered with thousands of flies, in parentheses, maki. So one could barely see the figure of the man for the numerous flies on him, and hence his nickname. Oh, maki must mean fly, Makiwala Baba. In Jamnagar, Baba communed with the spiritual charge man of the area named Kawatwala Baba. This great must wore several coats and never removed his clothing. He lived isolated in a cemetery. When Baba met with him for the second time near a forested area, the saint wept loudly before Baba and shouted in a heartbreaking cry full of anguish, "I have found God in the wilds." And the note says, Jungle Mine Kuda Migaya. During this tour in Rajkot one day, while Baba was sitting on a commode having a bowel movement, I love the details here, Savak was nearby and thought to himself, if I eat Baba's excreta, I will surely make great progress on the path. Savak was quite new in the master's circle and had gotten this peculiar idea from a book he had read about Upasni Maharaj performing such an act. The note says, such an act on the part of Upasni Maharaj was connected with his state of coming down after he was God realized by Sai Baba. When Baba was through, he called Savak and instructed him in a warning tone. Clean this commode thoroughly, but remember, don't let even a speck of excrement touch your hands, use a brush. If even a speck touches you, you will turn into a leper. Savak was dumbfounded, and his wish to perform such a penance remained unfulfilled. Baba had read his thoughts, and Savak learned that it was best to carry out the master's wishes and not try to, quote unquote, gain something on his own. Baba returned to Jaipur on Friday, 24 January 1941, and described his trip to the women Mandali. We visited 12 cities in 10 days, and I bathed 17 musts. During this tour, we spent every night in the train and lived like the very poorest, eating baked chickpeas, apples, and ganthia. There's a note. Ganthia is a dry chickpea snack consumed by the poor in India. Very nutritious, though, chickpeas are. We traveled by third class, and the compartment meant for 30 people contained 60. I thought that no one would recognize me, but on alighting at the first station in Kathiawar, a Hindu came and took my darshan. So from then on, I had to keep my face covered at every stop. But the one who most amused me during this journey was Fatty, or Fatih Kaka. We all had colds, but Fatih completely lost his voice. He could only whisper, which he did without stopping. I was silent, and so was the other one, Gustaji. Only one of us could speak. That was Savak. But he was occupied with looking after the luggage, purchasing tickets, and seeing to other things. So with the two Maunis, that's silent recluses, a third was there, Fatih, and I thought it was very funny. 17 musts were contacted during these 10 days. One was of a very high order. He was quite naked and had been sitting in one place for the last 40 years. He was covered with billions of flies, as if clothed by them. But he was very robust and strong. His name was Bapu. Also known as Makiwala Baba. Then, commenting on the war, Baba spelled out, all are killing one another now. From March onwards, it will increase. Besides killing, there will be floods, earthquakes, fires, famine, and diseases, all of which will take a great toll. Nature killing them and themselves killing each other. And God does all this. Why? The root of the evil is so deep rooted that unless drastic and worldwide remedies are applied, it cannot be uprooted. It has to be knocked from every side, and then only can it be exterminated. Then real peace and happiness will be permanent. It will be automatically established. People will then learn to love one another, to help one another. How is it possible for the greatest sinners to become saints? Because their penance is so drastic and complete. The transmutation is real and full. The world is miserable, and India too is miserable, though it is not directly involved in the war. Baba again asked the women on Sunday, 26 January 1941, to sign a written promise to obey the list of orders until August of that year with renewed zeal. He then observed, I am certain all the outside devotees will follow the orders, but I have not the slightest hope of you all, my inner circle. For the next 20 days, you must keep your mood at its best. Under any circumstances and conditions, you are not to get excited, not to have moods, but always to be happy and smiling. This is the greatest help to me. People join the war, get wounded, and suffer untold hardships. But that is easy in comparison. To keep your best mood in every situation, never to be upset or sad, to speak gently and lovingly, never using a harsh word, not to get excited when someone steals your chapati, but to say from the bottom of your heart, may Baba bless you. That is really difficult. To control the self is more difficult than walking on fire or glass. It is easy to win a war of nations, but most difficult to win your own self. It is the only real thing on this path, to keep a calm head, tolerate and swallow everything. The Sufis call it zabt. My mother helps me the most now. She gives ample opportunities to others to control themselves. You have won the greatest war when you win yourself. When she comes, when she, Shireen Mai, comes, you will have more opportunities of controlling yourselves. For example, I feel like murdering her sometimes, yet I embrace her lovingly. You should do the same. They then discussed their upcoming journey to Quetta.
Eugene, you missed a paragraph above that.
Thank you. Baba repeated, as Christ has said, what availeth the man who gains all but loses his own, that gains, what availeth the man who gains all the world and loses his own soul? And I say, it is easy to win wars, but difficult to win one's own self. It means the same thing. They then discussed their upcoming journey to Quetta. It was decided to go there in the blue bus and cars. There was a discussion about packing, and Rano, who had been doing this duty all along since the start of the blue bus tours, said she would continue. After everything was settled, Baba joked, 6 of you will die. With Scylla, we will bury her fan. With Banubai, her snuff box. With Narina, her typewriter. And with Nadia, her notebook. You will die in pairs. Masi and Kakubai, Carmen Masi and Banu, Narina and Elizabeth. On the way to Quetta, we will go sightseeing and see new places. But in Quetta, there will be no time for sightseeing. There I will be in seclusion and fast and do all the things an avatar has to do. Do your packing and keep your bags ready by the 20th of February. Then we leave Jaipur for the place where all of you might get kidnapped, buried, or bombed by the Russians. Eva, could you continue, or Rosie?
Sure, I can. Baba then asked, if someone asked you, who is Meher Baba, what would you say? Nadine answered, God. Norina said, the God-man. Baba concurred, not God, but God-man. God-man is more than God. God is absolute. One who manifests the absolute is the God-man. The person who is one with God is man-God. It is wrong to say just God. Jivatma equals man. Mahatma equals pilgrim on the path. Paramatma equals God. When Jivatma becomes one with Paramatma, it is called Shivatma. Paramatma cannot be called Shivatma. In the early morning of Monday, 27 January 1941, Baba rode to Alwar village in Elizabeth's car to contact Musts and returned at 1:20 in the afternoon. Later that day, he explained to the women, today, my work was done in 5 minutes. A very well-known Must lives in the house of a merchant. He is about 45 years old and is called Yasin. And footnote. Yasin is an Arabic name for Prophet Muhammad. There are 2 types of mad. First, the worldly, who go mad for money and women, or because of some loss or shock, and so forth. The other, the God mad, whose minds become paralyzed on the path. They are like yogis, but those who get confused and go mad. Must means intoxicated. Musts are intoxicated with divine love. The expression drunk with wine, used by poets, means that divine intoxication. Musts are generally on the 3rd and 5th planes, and sometimes on the 4th, but never on the 1st or 2nd planes. The Wali is of the 5th plane, but he is not a must. Majzubs, too, can be on the 5th plane. A must on the 5th plane is drunk with love of God. He sees neither the world nor himself, but only longs for union with God. A Wali on the 5th plane sees the plane and himself, but is not attached to the plane and longs for union with God. A Majzub of the 6th plane is one with that plane. A Majzub of the 7th plane is one with God. If he comes down, he is Katub, Sadguru, the perfect master, the man God. One on the 6th plane is called a Pir. He sees himself everywhere, fully conscious, and longs for union with God. So there exists the Majzubs on the 5th, 6th, or 7th planes, Pirs on the 6th plane, Walis on the 5th plane, Musts on the 3rd, 4th, or 5th plane, God mad on the 1st or 2nd plane, and the world mad on the 0 plane. Between the third and fourth planes, and between the fifth and sixth planes, and between the sixth and seventh planes, there are stages called Mukam e Harat, where souls become stupefied and enter a divine coma. When Margaret is intoxicated, what does she experience? Does she remember worldly worries? Does she then care for anything? Similarly, the must who is drunk with God love cares for nothing, sees nothing. As the Majzub is one with the plane he is on, he is drowned in it. How can you differentiate between the mad, the God mad, the must, the Majzub, the Wali, when all act alike? When I once sent Sultan's sister for a must, he instead came back with 7 worldly mad. How do you differentiate between an ordinary madman and an ordinary drunkard? The drunkard totters and the mad does not. That one movement of tottering is an indication that he is drunk. The mad and must act alike, but there are certain gestures and signs by which one can know. The must here bites and throws stones and filth, but he is a very good must and not mad. Even the Majzub on the 7th plane, who is one with God, acts like that. But they are all like children. They are mad and ghosts all in one. They attract only when necessary. Otherwise, they lie hidden like a jewel in a pile of coal. At 7 o'clock on the morning of 28 January 1941, Baba again left Jaipur in Elizabeth's car for must contacts in Alwar district. Gustadji and Shanji accompanied him. Savak had been sent ahead to arrange the meetings, ascertain the must's locations, and prepare to take Baba to them immediately upon his arrival 3 hours later. In Alwar, Baba contacted 5 musts and requested absolute privacy, instructing the Mandali to stand at a distance and not even to look toward him while he contacted them. To contact one must, they had to drive 3 miles outside the city, and Baba then had to walk another 4 miles through a desert. But even this he did with the zealous enthusiasm of one eager to finish a job. He returned smiling in spite of the fatigue from walking those long miles, happy that his work had been successfully completed. From Alwar, Baba and the men drove to Ismailpur to contact the 6th plane Jamali must, Gokal Baba. Footnote. The must's name, Gokal, is also spelled Gokul. After many wrong turns and confusion in finding a guide, Baba was able to contact the must in a small temple on the outskirts of the village. The old saint, well over 100 years old, was greatly revered and lived in that humble temple with 5 or more dogs. Gokal Baba welcomed Meher Baba on their last meeting with the words, "God has come."
Thank you, Eva.
You're welcome.
Rosalie, can you read from here on a different? occasion in January or
Uh,
February of yeah.
on a different occasion in January or February of 1941, Baba had contact with the spiritual chargeman of Jaipur, Nanga Baba. This great must and saint lived outside Jaipur at the village of Amber, and Erich was sent to bring him to Baba. The following is Erich's account of his encounter with Nanga Baba. He was completely naked and carried a forked stick with bits of dirty rag tied to it. He lived on a mountain facing the Amber Palace, and each morning walked down to Amber Village, took some sweetmeats from a shopkeeper who gave them to him, and speaking to no one, returned to his mountain. About halfway up the mountain, at a small temple where there was a spring of water, he washed, ate the sweetmeats, drank water, and then walked back up to his mountain top. At this little temple, he used each day, after eating and refreshing himself, to make mud balls. I asked him what these quotes unquote mud balls were for, and the Mus told me that he was ordered to throw these quotes unquote fireballs on big cities in other parts of the world. And because of this, he was very busy and could not come with me to see Meher Baba. I then asked him what his peculiar forked stick was for, and he replied that the stick and the knots of old rags on it helped him to aim and point toward the cities on which he threw the fireballs. In no uncertain terms, he then told me to go away, but he promised to come for contact with Meher Baba one day when he visited Jaipur. I tried with more persuasion to get the Mus to come with me at that time, but he refused and hit me. A few days later, however, Nanga Baba was spotted by Erich walking along the road past Baba's bungalow in Jaipur, and the Mus was coaxed into the garage and contacted by Baba. So Nanga Baba kept his promise, although he seldom ever left Amber. Also, during January of 1941, Baba contacted another very high Mus in Jaipur called Chutan Shah. This Jalali Mus, who was very dirty and of a violent nature, lived in a most disreputable area near the prostitutes' quarter of the town. Chutan Shah was brought to Baba's bungalow for 1 or 2 days, and Baba would not allow him to be left alone and had various members of the Mandali sit with him in rotation for 2 hours each. Chutan Shah was revered by the local townspeople, who also feared his violent temper. And it was said that he had once killed a man by throwing a stone at his head. Meanwhile, Don and Nilu had been ordered to bring the blue bus from Calicut to Jaipur, and they endured countless hardships in carrying out Baba's instructions. The tires and tubes on the bus were completely worn out, and it was extremely taxing to drive it in that condition over hundreds of miles. John had to stop often for repairs. One time, when they had a flat tire, he had to stuff a blanket inside the tire until they found somewhere to fix it. At one point, the back wheels fell off on one side. Whenever they would stop, a crowd would gather to stare at the strange vehicle, piled high with all sorts of odd baggage, but no passengers. At times, John had to wash and clean the bus himself. They subsisted on whatever meager food was available along the way. Thus, after much hardship, John and Nilu brought the bus to Jaipur at the end of December, and Baba was very pleased with them. Both were given the duty of looking after the Mandali's health. At this time of the year, Jaipur was infested with flies. Swarms of them would hover, especially during meal times, making eating a battle of evasive action. Elizabeth would eat sitting under a mosquito net. Margaret applied honey to her toe so the flies would be attracted there, leaving her to eat in peace. Baba finally insisted that Don and Nilu think of some way to get rid of the pest. And although they brainstormed for a solution, every plan failed. In Jaipur, Don received his notice to appear for an interview to join the army, and he left temporarily for Hyderabad. He was told to report for duty on 1st March at Pune. His wartime postings were to be in Pune, Secunderabad, and Bangalore, where he was in charge of a 160-bed hospital for Italian prisoners of war because he spoke Italian. Don would come to see Baba whenever he had leave. When the war ended in 1945, Don rejoined Baba and was with him permanently. During this period, a young man from Delhi named Kaikabad Ardeshir Desai, 29, read in the January 1941 issue of Meher Baba Journal that Baba would be staying in Jaipur. He came there to meet Baba on 1st February. He had first heard of Baba 12 years before in Navsari from his brother Adir Desai, who was a follower. When Keki came to the Jaipur bungalow, however, Baba was working with Chati Baba. He sent this message through Narina, quotes, "I am pleased that you have come, but since I am in seclusion, I ask you to return to where you have come from by the first available train," end quotes. Although disappointed, Keki obeyed. It would be a year before he met the divine beloved in form. Baba wished to wash the feet of the poor in Jaipur. 2 residents of the city, Laya Chiranjilal Agrawal and C.J. Nair, were assigned the task of selecting and bringing to Baba's bungalow 50 truly poor and needy destitutes. Footnote. L.C. Agrawal was a lawyer, and C.G. Nair was the United Press of India representative in Jaipur. These two men had wished for Baba's darshan, but because he was in seclusion, it was not possible. However, since they had participated in the program for the poor, they did have the good fortune of seeing Baba then. Agrawal and Nair brought the poor persons to Baba on Sunday, 2nd February 1941. He washed each person's feet, placed his head on their feet, and gave them clothes and sweets. Agrawal was deeply impressed. He later related to Chanji, "What an accumulation of greatness. I was asked to pour water and hand Baba the soap, but I had to be constantly reminded of my duty because my mind had become absolutely blank. I felt such an extraordinary feeling of joy, which was contagious. I was staring at Baba, drawn by his charm, which one cannot describe. While I was in that state of ecstasy, a vision I had in the past came back to me in all its details. I dreamt of Lord Krishna coming along a wide road, followed by Arjuna. Meher Baba had that same expression of joy as I saw in Krishna's face. Lord Krishna stopped in front of me. He opened his mouth and showed me the entire universe as he had shown it to Arjuna. My joy was so great that even in my dream, I clapped my hands loud enough to scare the family in the house, who immediately came and asked what had happened to me. I had not recalled this dream for years, but when I stood in the presence of Meher Baba, it came back in all its reality. I feel happier today than I have ever felt before. I can believe that the power of such a man can go a long way in bringing about the solution to the present world chaos.
Thanks, Rosalie. Marvin, could you read from your C.G. Nair too was moved and related after that?
C.G. Nair, too, was moved and related. What a wonderful man. You cannot describe him. What nobility, what grace. You cannot define it. I can now understand why you all flock to him and stick to him as you do. He is like a huge magnet that draws you to him. I could not resist, in spite of his precise orders to the contrary, not to fold my hands in reverence when first facing him. His smile will always remain with me. It is so bewildering. I understand now the meaning of the word awakener. He touches you, and something happens inside of you. I believe he could be a genius in all departments of life. He worked so systematically and with such precision. I am sure he knew how much water to pour on one, how much on the other. When he was bathing the poor in that little dark room, it seemed filled with light. When the function was over, I was so deeply touched by his truly divine personality and by the experience I had that I could not resist an inner urge to pay my respects to him before leaving. But he had already ordered that we could not see him anymore and that we should leave. This meeting will be the turning point in my life. On Sunday, 5th February, Baba again departed from Jaipur for Delhi to contact musts with Chanji and Gustaji. At the Delhi station, Baba and Gustaji sat near the telegraph office, while Chanji went to look for Kaka, who was arriving by a different train. Minu Karas of Karachi had suddenly been ordered to go to Delhi on official police work, and Chanji was shocked to see him standing on the platform. Since Baba was traveling incognito, as per his standing order, Minu covered his eyes when he saw Baba and turned away. Chanji asked him to help find Kaka and then leave without meeting Baba. It's a torture, Minu pleaded to Chanji, but he obeyed. Baba and the Mandali stayed the night at the Regal Hotel, and early the next morning, Chanji was sent to Minu's hotel next door with a message from Baba. Minu was to accompany Chanji late that night to contact the mosque at the Jama Masjid, which he did. Jal Kerawala also arrived in Delhi and accompanied Baba around the city looking for musts. Baba's most significant contact was with Hafizji Nabina, the spiritual chargeman of Delhi, whom he had contacted previously in 1939. Baba spent 3 hours searching for him on the morning of the 6th and went out again that afternoon, at which time the totally naked must was located. Baba was very happy with the work done. Footnote: Hafizji Nabina died a few months later on 6 July 1941. Baba's next journey to Saharanpur, Lucknow, and Benares, sending Chanji back to Jaipur. He contacted musts in these cities also, and afterward left for Calcutta. From Calcutta, contacting musts along the way, Baba went south to Jagannath Puri on the 11th, where Baidul and Savak were waiting for him. Baba contacted musts there, and then, accompanied only by Baidul, left for Waltair and Madras. Ustaji and Savak were sent back to Jaipur. Adi Sr., after not seeing Baba for many months, had been ordered to come to Madras. He met Baba there on Thursday, 13th February 1941, in his Vauxhall car. Jal Karawala had come with him. They immediately left at 1 that afternoon in Adi's car for Ramnad, where Baba was again to contact the revered saint and must, Pulakola Baba, who Baba indicated was between the 6th and 7th planes. Baba gave Adi as much tea as he wanted to fortify him for the long drive. The following is Adi's recollection of the event. The cups of tea no doubt gave me a nerve stimuli, but none so invigorating as the dynamic presence of Baba himself in the car. The depressing memory of my stay at Bangalore ever since Baba's departure in April of 1940, a long, tiresome, and soul-enervating period, the likes of which I never experienced before, faded into nothingness before the radiance of his sunny smile, his familiar gestures, and his loving remarks by means of the alphabet board. Baba told Adi, the must at Ramnad is the most important in India. He is the king of all musts, and it is a very significant stage of my contact with musts to be contacting him again. You are lucky to be with me on my birthday the following day, driving me on this important errand. They reached Trichinopoly at 9 in the evening and continued driving throughout the night, stopping at a dak bungalow to rest from 3 to 6 a.m. Baidul slept near Baba on the veranda, and Adi and Jal slept in the car. They started again at 8 a.m., reached Kilakarai, 10 miles from Ramnad, the southernmost part of India, where Pulakola Baba stayed. Baba ordered the men to fast until his contact with the old must was over. Baba fed Pulakola a little food and sat with him, but for only 10 minutes. However, he indicated that he was greatly pleased with the contact. They immediately
Thanks,
began.
Margaret.
Okay.
Shall I ask the next reader to read, if it's okay?
Sure.
Maybe. uh, Would you like to read from here? They immediately pick from here.
Sure. Thank you. Good morning.
Thanks.
They immediately began their return trip to Madras at 9 that morning, reaching there at midnight. Baba directed Adi to drive back to Bangalore in his car, and Baba proceeded to Chanda by train, accompanied by Baidu and Jal Kerawala. Baba contacted a fifth plane mast in Chanda named Lohewala Baba, who lived deep in a forest. This mast gathered junked iron pieces from the railway salvage yard and hung them high in the treetops of the forest. Baba went to Nagpur, where he contacted more masts. Then they boarded a train for Delhi, where they would take another train to Jaipur. In Delhi, they had a few hours to wait before the Jaipur train departed. So Baba took the men went to see a new Charlie Chaplin movie, The Great Dictator. Code, and I've seen this several times. The Great Dictator was a satirical attack on Hitler and Mussolini. Chaplin depicted the Nazi swastika as a symbol of betrayal, the double cross. Hitler was outraged by the film and protested against this showing. That was a footnote. Okay, continued. Baba liked the movie immensely. Quote, it is the only film I would have liked to see 7 times, in quote, he remarked. He had a letter written to the Mehrabad Mandali instructing that everyone should see the movie any number of times they liked. And he further added that those who had been forbidden to see films under the current restrictions were allowed to see only this movie when it came to their area. After having covered almost 5,000 miles in 2 weeks through the north, south, and east of the country, Baba returned to Jaipur late at night on 18 February 1941. H summarized Baba's recent journey. This H is saying, quote, throughout his exhausting, if not excruciating journey, but literally spent every night in crowded third-class train compartments. During the daytime, he had no rest as he was constantly looking for masts. It was scorchingly hot in Ramnad and Madras, and adding to the usual wartime obstacles of traveling in India, when Baba entered Lucknow, there was a riot. Civil disturbances occurred at Calcutta also, and at the other places Baba visited, and there's a footnote. Footnote says, prior to beginning the mass journey, Baba had intimated many of his lovers, quote, all orders such as fasting twice a week, etc., given to you are, as directly stated, to be followed until July 31st, 1941. But from February 1st to February 20th, 1941, I want you to follow all these orders, not only implicitly, but also with the utmost zeal. Footnote finished. Quote, who can have an idea of the great love Meher Baba had for these mosques? I think ages said. To contact a mosque, he would travel thousands of miles by train, car, on foot, in bullocks carts, riding on horses and camels, in the heat, rain, and cold, without proper rest, food, or drink, amidst the worst imaginable discomforts. Next page. Even to snatch a few hours of sleep was not possible. The only rest Baba had was in serving those he loved, by bathing them, shaving them, feeding them, pressing their feet, massaging their bodies, and complying with their every word and whim. That was the elixir and antidote to all his tiredness. After this exhausting tour, instead of resting, Baba went out and contacted several mosques in Jaipur city. He also worked with Chati Baba, who was still being cared for by the men Mandali. Also, soon after Baba settled back in Jaipur, he issued the following circular to be mailed to his followers in India. The 15th of February 1941, the Ramand, the day I saw that old saint, was the day I decided, and there's a footnote, Baba's actual contact with Palukola Baba was on 14 February 1941. Footnote is finished. Yeah. First, that on the 1st of August 1941, my speaking operation would begin speaking to myself. And second, that my world manifestation would come to full expression on the 15th of February 1942. My present seclusion system will continue until April 15. Throughout the time, beginning from April 15, 1941, until February 15, 1942, my seclusion will be absolute. Parenthesis, from August 1st to February 15, I will literally not be seen by anyone, even my closest disciples. During this period, I shall lead the world affairs to the climax imperative before any manifestation in 1942, which will make or mark the beginning of the general adjustment of the world and bring out the subsequent unfoldment of a spiritual revival. I have decided to send Norina, Nadine, and Elizabeth to the USA and Margaret and Irene to Europe to spread my message there. By April end, this declaration will be announced universally, and my disciples will personally deliver the final continuation message in places allotted by me. All those orders to observe special orders will be free from obeying these orders from August 1st, and thereafter will observe the orders they obeyed throughout their connection with me. But from January 1st, 1942 to February 15, 1942, And those who have been promised spiritual advancement or illumination or even the highest experience of self-realization will fast on 1.5 seers of milk a day, pure or with tea or coffee, or made into buttermilk, to be drunk anytime and any number of times as desired. Tea or coffee can be drunk made in pure milk or milk and water or any water.
Thank you, Mahu. Meher Kiran, would you like to read next?
Sure, thanks. Where do I start?
The quantity of milk on top of the page,
Right.
20 by 96.
The quantity of milk taken during the whole day must not exceed 1.5 seers. The quantity of sugar must not exceed 8 tablespoons during the whole day. Water and aerated soda. Water can be taken as much as desired. From August 1st, 1941 to February 15th, 1942, Gustaji Hansotia, KJ Pleader, Swami Bhabananda, and Savak Kotwal will retire into seclusion in the mountains as I will order. Regarding his upcoming 47th birthday in 1941, Baba had already announced this year being the most important one in spiritual history. My birthday, falling on February 15th, will not be celebrated publicly or privately. Memo arrived in Jaipur on 17th February 1941 to give the others ample opportunities for control, as Baba had put it, accompanied by her son Jail Bai. Baba was away, however, when his mother and brother arrived. One of the men who had helped in the poor program, Agarwal, was a well-known lawyer in Jaipur. He asked Baba to permit public darshan, but Baba refused. Baba did, however, allow Norina to deliver 2 lectures about him in Jaipur. One to a group of lawyers on 18 January and another for the general public on 13 February. Dr. Deshmukh then invited Norina to give a lecture at Nagpur University, where he taught philosophy. With Baba's consent, she went there on 18 February. Her lecture was so effective, 3 students, Ram P. Pankraj, Abdul Mazid Khan, and Narayan Nana Gopal Kher, came into Baba's close contact after hearing her speak. Abdul Khan's mother had recently expired, and the shock was so severe he had wept for days. But after Norina's lecture, he was so impressed by her speech, he requested an interview and went to Deshmukh's house the day after the lecture to meet her. Abdul poured out his heart, telling Norina how depressed he had been since his mother's death. Norina spoke to him tenderly about Baba. He was so comforted to look Norina to be God's angel, and all his sorrows and grief went away. Norina later spoke to Baba about the young man, and Baba sent him this message: Feel you're watched by me. Plans for a journey by Baba and the group to Quetta had already begun. Eruch was called to Jaipur from Bangalore and was given the duty of driving the blue bus. Elizabeth would drive her own car with Baba, Mehera, and a few others. Pendu and Rusi Pop Irani had been instructed at Ahmednagar to go to Quetta and arrange living accommodations for Baba and the group. Pendu and Rusi came to Jaipur on 22nd February 1941 and the following morning had a long discussion with Baba about the arrangements. Rusi Pup was a former resident of Quetta, and during the 1920s, Baba had stayed at his house 3 times. Following Baba's advice, Rusi and his family had left Quetta and were now residing in Ahmednagar. Rusi's daughter Katie had joined the women mandali on the Blue Bus tour, and another daughter, Goher, was studying to be a doctor in Bombay. During her vacations, Goher would eagerly come and stay with Baba as she too had tasted wine and longed for more. For his work, Baba indicated that en route to Quetta, he wanted to cross the Indus River and the 5 tributaries. Plans were chalked out to travel this way, although it was a precarious route, infested with thieves and dacoits. Where his work was concerned, no thought of safety was considered. Age noted. Besides, where is the question of safety for one who has the whole universe in the palm of his hand? As directed, taking the mast, Chati Baba with them, Baidul, Gussaji, Krishna, Venkoba Rao, and Vishnu traveled to Quetta by train, preceding Baba's group. Chandji also left by train for Agra with Memo and Jalbai. Baba left in Elizabeth's Buick with Mehera and 5 other women at 6 o'clock on Tuesday morning, 25th February 1941. The others followed in the blue bus. The bus was completely packed. 28 persons squeezed into seats designed for 14. Aruch was driving, and Neelu and later Jalbai sat next to him in the front seat. A footnote: Neelu was again to serve as assistant mechanic. Reaching Agra at noon that day, they stopped at a dog bungalow. Baba directed Aruch and Neelu to unload all the bedding from the top of the bus, and throughout the journey, they had to do this task. After settling in, Baba sent Aruch out to find Mas, while Neelu and Jalbai did the marketing. In the afternoon, after a lunch of fried potatoes, bread, butter, and chutney brought from Jabalpur, Baba took the women to the Taj Mahal, the Agra Fort, and other places of interest. While at the Taj Mahal, Baba was informed about a saintly old woman who lived in the deserted horse stable not far away. Baba was guided there by a gardener at the Taj Mahal. When Baba and the men approached the stable, they heard a wild cry like a roaring of a tiger. And when they entered the stable, they found the woman. She was packing back and forth, roaring in this extraordinary fashion. And when Baba approached her, she stopped. She beckoned to Baba with respect. And Baba gestured to her to ask her if she was happy to see him. She replied that she was truly very happy. Although old, she was a large, strong woman. Both of her arms covered with bangles, and she had a bright, attractive face. Baba remarked she was a very high Mastani and referred to her as Mastani Mai.
It's
Thank you.
so good time to stop here.